Great. So, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for our independent living fireside chat. My name is Caitlin Phillips, and I am one of the organizers involved with our 12 holidays of 2020. So, although we are not able to host our annual Christmas gala and dance this year, we are so excited that we can still virtually connect with everyone during the holiday season. At this point, I will ask attendees, if they haven't already done so, to mute their microphones so there isn't any feedback. And there will be an opportunity later on in the event to ask your panelists questions, and you can do this within the chat box, or you can also unmute your microphone and ask your questions verbally. We will also be recording part of this event. However, when it comes to participants asking or bringing their own questions forward, we will stop the recording. So first off, we would like to extend our thanks to Killam Apartment REIT for sponsoring our 12 holidays of 2020, and also extend our warmest thanks to MP Andy Fillmore, MLAs Kevin Murphy, Barbara Adams, Rafa DiCostanzo, Lena Metledge-Diab, Tim Houston, Ian Rankin, Patricia Arab, Ben Jessam, Susan LeBlanc, Lisa Roberts, Lavi Kousoulis, and City Councilors Sean Cleary, Pam Lovelace, and Iona Stoddard for their generous contributions. Whew, it's quite a list of people. We would also like to thank Sadakona Military Band, as well as the Maritime Bangor Group, and the Therapeutic Approach Yoga Studio for partnering with us for this holiday offering. So before I introduce our panelists for today's event, we want to acknowledge that our 12 holidays of 2020 takes place in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. These lands are covered by the treaties of peace and friendship that date from the mid to late 1700s. And we are so thankful to be able to live, work, and play on these lands as people with disabilities and as Nova Scotians. For today's fireside chat, we have 4 panelists with us. Jenn MacNeil is a former ILNS employee and currently works at the Canadian National Institute for the Blind for the Atlantic Provinces region as the lead of their Come to Work program, where she specifically provides support to individuals in Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Connor Hirtle is our next panelist, and he has been involved with ILNS in a variety of ways, from being our keynote speaker at our 20th Christmas Gala and Dance, to also being a co-coordinator of our most recent Art of Disability Festival, to even providing graphic design services for our organization. Currently, Connor is completing a master's degree in sport management from the University of Florida, and he is also working part-time for Conduct. Finally, we have Kevin, Penny, and Dee Osmond joining us as well. They are an interabled couple living in Halifax. Kevin works within the Nova Scotia Department of Advanced Labor and Labor and Advanced Education, within their post-secondary disability services. And Dee is an occupational therapy assistant with the Nova Scotia Health Authority. They are also well-known YouTubers, so if you haven't seen their Accessible Adventurers channel videos, you should definitely check those out. They are great to watch. And thank you all for joining us this evening. So we're going to get started. And although I just mentioned a little bit of information about each of you, in my introduction speech, I was hoping that you all could tell us a little bit more about yourself. So how about we start with Jenn?
All right. So as Caitlin mentioned, I am currently working at CNIB as the Come to Work Regional Lead. Outside of that, I have a big goofy golden retriever named Lenny, who I've had for almost 6 years. He's getting old, gray, literally. And I enjoy singing. So I've been in the Halifax Music Co-op's choir for 2 years. However, we are shut down due to the pandemic. And I also play a sport called goalball.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jenn. Connor, you're up next.
Hey guys, yeah, as Caitlin said, I'm currently doing my master's degree down in Florida. Actually supposed to be in Florida right now, but with everything going on, I'm stuck up here in the cold instead of being down in the warmth. But I think the plan is to head down there in January with my nurse, so that'll be a little bit of a vacation while I go to school. I also run a junior B hockey team out of East Hants. We had gotten up and going for the start of our season, but actually shut down here on, I think it was the start of December, maybe a little bit before there, when the government announced all the new regulations. So a little bit disappointed in that, because it was fun getting back into the rink and whatnot, but hopefully that'll be up sooner rather than later. Other than that, just sticking around my apartment, as I assume everybody else is. I have a little French bulldog running around, keeping me busy. So yeah, it's a little bit more about me.
Great. Thanks, Connor. And Kevin and Dee, you are up.
Yeah, well, you summed it up pretty well, Caitlin. I'm Dee. I'm half of Accessible Adventures, I guess. And as you said, I work as an occupational therapy assistant. I work in assistive technology, and that's one of my big interests and passions. Outside of work, I just love being outdoors. I love playing sports. I played wheelchair basketball for 4 years. Growing up, my main sport was sailing, and that's actually how Kevin and I met, when I was involved with the adaptive sailing program called Sail Able Nova Scotia here in Halifax. So I like being outside and trying to shed a light on accessibility and adventures, and how you can adapt and still be able to go out and explore the beautiful province that we live in.
Oh, great. So once again, my name is Kevin Penny. I actually started my career, I think my work career, at Independent Living Nova Scotia way back in the day, when it was called, oh gosh, I think it was called Independent Living Nova Scotia, maybe, or
Independent Living Resource Center, I think it was.
Yeah, maybe Metro Resource Center.
That's what, yeah.
Merkel. There you go, Merkel. So I aging myself a bit, but I really got into a lot of support for persons with disabilities at that time, and it's kind of continued throughout my career. I work with for persons with disabilities in the public service, giving them supports they need to be successful at post-secondary. Like Dee, we both love to travel, go on adventures, spread awareness, and show what the world has to offer persons with disabilities, and have a lot of fun doing it. So this chat should be interesting. It's good to get to know some other individuals in the city as well who are doing some great and wonderful things.
Great. Thanks so much. All right, so now we are going to move on to our next question. So what does independent living, or IL, mean to you? And let's start off with Connor.
I think this is a big thing for me before my injury. I was very independent, back in Halifax, originally from the South Shore, just outside of Bridgewater, back in the city, doing my own thing, in my own place with some roommates and whatnot. And, when that's taken away from you, it's a big kick in the rear end. So I miss it a lot. I depend on people a lot more now than I'm used to, and even in a small sense. So what does it mean to me? I mean, a lot. being by yourself, you don't get a lot of alone time to do more than, you're used to. But yeah, I miss that part of it for sure.
Great. Thanks, Connor. And Jen, what does independent living mean to you?
I think it encompasses a lot of different parts of life. So for me, it's being able to make my own decisions in an informed way, and to be as independent as possible. But also realizing that sometimes for us to be as independent as possible, it requires that we ask for help and we reach out when we need it. So having that ability to ask for help, but also knowing that I can do as much as I can by myself. So for me, that's really important. And again, being able to make really informed choices on things that, I want to do. So recently we just moved. All of our new washer and dryer and stove and all of that stuff is now digital. So it's all touch screens. Well, in that case, I needed to depend on some people to help me so that going forward, I'd be more independent. So I think for me, it's a weird interdependency of being independent and also relying on others. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Thanks so much, Jen. All right. And Kevin and Dee, what does independent living mean to both of you?
Well, I think both Connor and Jennifer hit the nail on the head. I think it's kind of being in control of your own destiny, like everybody else, being able to make those informed decisions, and just be able to be in control of what you do with your life. It comes down to that simple, and that can encompass so many ways. But I like what Jen said, also being open and being able to have the support mechanisms you need in place individually to be able to live independently, and being okay with that, and knowing that we all have different accommodations that we require, both at home and in the workplace, and having those options. That's what I think independent living means to me.
Yeah, I think it definitely, to me, I echo everyone and what they said about independent living. And I think for me, it is the ability for us to be able to manage our lives in a way that makes sense for us, and being able to, accept that we all need help with different aspects of our lives, and that it isn't simply being able to dress yourself, but it's so much more than how you can manage those skills to get through life in a way that gives you that control, I guess. And for Kevin and I, independent living means being able to manage our support so that we can both remain active in the community with things that we enjoy, that we both have time to ourselves to enjoy the things that we don't enjoy doing together, I guess, and the freedom to kind of manage our own schedules and our lives. Yeah. And I think that's so easy to take for granted, especially when you look around at some of the things that are happening right now in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's very much like a good point, that independent living is going to look different to everyone. But it's knowing that you do have that control, and you have those choices to live the life that how you want. So those are all very good answers. So thank you. All right. So we've all mentioned COVID-19 and that we are currently in the second wave. Hopefully it won't be as long as the first one. However, are there any specific activities that you use to cope with during this time? And we will start with Jen.
Any activities? So for me, during the first wave, I had a lot of anxiety around COVID. And so I would go and walk my dogs. We have a trail behind where I live. And so when I needed to get out, or I was feeling really antsy or overwhelmed, I would go outside and I would just walk and be in the nature. So that was a good way for me to cope. I read a lot, so I sort of go off and engage in something that's not COVID. The other thing that I've really learned and I find has been very helpful is unplugging. It's really important that we understand what's happening with COVID, but at the same time, too much of that can be really unhealthy. So taking some time away from the screens, away from the news, to try to just recharge, I think has been a real plus for me. And then of course, just continuing to advocate. As somebody who can't see, I touch literally everything, and we're not supposed to touch anything in COVID. So there's been a lot of conversations around, you know, why people with sight loss are touching things so much. There's been a lot of conversation around sighted guide and how to, you know, what's the best way to do that to support somebody. Lots of conversations with people about the dog and how the dog's not going to give them COVID. So like doing a lot of the advocacy stuff is really important to me as well. So that's kind of how I'm managing it.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Jen. That provides a lot of insight, which is great. All right, Kevin and Dee, what are you doing apart from your YouTube channel to cope with the second wave of the pandemic?
I think we've kind of gone through a different like evolution of COVID hobbies. I think definitely I can completely echo the anxiety in the first wave of just kind of trying to figure out what is going on and how to manage it. And we actually channeled that kind of and put a lot of work into our YouTube channel. Like I learned how to edit things a bit better, and we kind of learned about how to post more about topics that were relevant or interesting, and learning about our audience and growing that, and all of those kinds of things that had always been put like off to the side, like, okay, we'll figure that out sometime. But then as the weather got better, we started exploring a lot more about Nova Scotia. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, like as you guys might or might not know, we love to travel, and we usually travel afar. As Connor says, we go to Florida. We've been to Florida a few times because the warmth, because of my spinal cord injury, really helped. So we lucked out. We got back from vacation like 3 days before the shutdown of the first wave. So that was very interesting for us because we got back just in time, and it could have gone a lot differently. We've heard stories of friends who went through quite a different experience. So for me, it was all so quick, I guess. Everything happened so quickly, it seemed, even though COVID-19 momentum or fear was starting to grow. I guess what's been good to me, and I'm one of the lucky ones, is I've been still continuing to work full time. Our workplace is very inclusive where I work, with the support we had. And I was set up to work from home, and many of my other employees, some who have special challenges or accommodations that they require because of their disability, were able to continue to work. So that gave me something to think about. I think I realized, and Dee kind of pointed this out in our relationship some, that I'm a very social person, and I kind of got caught in not going out too much, even just to go out and get fresh air, because it became very normal very quickly for me. But I think she saw my mood change sometimes and realized that sometimes how social was important for us to get out, and we really started to go out and explore more. We went to Cape Breton on holidays. We'd go to beaches. We'd do trails. Just get out in the outdoors, as Jennifer said, to get fresh air. And just having our YouTube channel and having ideas to look forward to really helped us kind of stay engaged and stay focused. And we were able to explore so many things this summer and share them and have a lot of fun.
Great, thanks so much. Yeah, it's really important in terms of, you know, our mental well-being. And I have especially found that like getting outside and still doing things that, you know, we might be doing them a little bit differently, but what makes us happy is very important. All right, and Connor, what have you been doing?
Yeah, so the first wave, I actually had my cousin move down towards the end of January, start of February. Finally convinced him, he's from Ontario, finally convinced him to move to Nova Scotia, and then all this stuff happened. So it's been a bit of a ride for him as well, because we had lots of plans to take him around the province a little bit and show him what it was like to live on the East Coast. But I mean, we still got to do a little bit of that during the the first wave, as Kevin said, I was beneficial enough to be able to work still. One with the Art of Disability Festival, and also with Kinduck. We're pretty much completely online based, so it was easy to work from home and still communicate with one another. So that was a big thing. My cousin is a guitar player, and I sing a little bit, so we started picking up that a little bit more, and learned a few songs and had a few jam sessions and whatnot to keep ourselves busy. I also was able to go home and see my parents a bit more than I usually do. They're right down on the South Shore. My dad's a lobster fisherman, so it's nice to get out on the water a little bit and just relax and get away from all the kerfuffle here in the city. But right now, kind of doing the same thing, still able to work from home, which is nice. Had a little bit of free time here now that I'm able to catch up on some schoolwork with assignments and papers and whatnot. And as I said, my hockey team shut down, so that's also given me a bit more free time. Not that I wanted away from that, but yeah, I mean, I'm also very social, as Kevin said too. I'm out whenever I can get out, and I've a lot of buddies around the city and lots of people I like to visit. So it's been difficult that way, that I haven't been able to see everybody. Almost, if you want to call it the gray zone between the first and second wave, I got out a little bit and sort of got those visits in while I could, and then this has happened. So hopefully that ends sooner rather than later, that I can see them before I head down to Florida.
Definitely, that's good. Yeah, hopefully you will get to see them before you leave. So that's great. All right, and then my final question for this evening, before we move to participant questions, is: do you have any advice for Nova Scotians with disabilities, or just Nova Scotians in general, who are working towards their own independent living goals? Let's start with Jenn.
All right. So I guess some advice that I would give is be patient with yourself. Sometimes everyone's independent living, it looks different for everybody. So you may be talking to people that are experiencing the same disability, but that doesn't mean that your experience is going to be the same as theirs. And sometimes it takes time to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. And maybe what works for you is different than what's working for, somebody else that you know. So yeah, being kind, being patient to yourself, learning to become an expert in your own needs and what you require, and not being afraid to advocate for those needs. Sometimes people think of people with disability as lesser than, or that we don't know, and we are the experts in our own body and our own abilities. So I think really paying attention to that and having that awareness, and not being afraid to say, this is what I need and this is how you can help me. So I guess those are the two pieces of advice that I would give.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jenn. All right, let's go back to Connor. What would your advice be for those working towards their own independent living goals?
I think one of the big ones that Jenn said was patience. When I first had my injury happen, I had a buddy that had been paralyzed maybe 2 or 3 years before, that I played hockey with growing up, and I found myself always comparing my injury to his, and wasn't really realizing that, everybody's disability is different, just the same as Kevin and I are both quadriplegics, but we both have completely different lives, completely different injury perspectives. So I found, again, that I just had to have some patience and realize that he might be, better off in one way, I might be better off in another. And, I started normalizing myself, I guess, call it, and not thinking that I had a disability. I was just given a different path and still tried to live my normal life. I got back into hockey. I got back into school. One of my main things is just don't give up on your dreams. I was on a podcast the other night with one of my guys from my hockey league, and I stated, like, as a little boy growing up, my goal was to play in the NHL. And now that I'm not, I don't have the ability to skate anymore, sort of switched the paths. My goal still is to get to the NHL, just in a different sense on the management side of things. So I think that's the biggest thing, is don't give up on your dreams at all. There's, again, you've been dealt probably a more difficult path than you thought you might be on for your life, but there's nothing holding you back. Just keep doing what you love to do.
Oh, that's great. Thanks so much for that, Connor. And then Kevin and Dee, what advice do you have for those working towards independent living goals?
I think everyone said it so true. Everyone is different, and it's hard to be different in a world where everyone wants to be normal. I really think that's so true. And I think it's a great time right now. I've been injured for almost 30 years, so I've seen the spectrum grow and change over many years and had my own journey. But I think we're in a good time. I think there's resources out there for people. There's help out there for people if you reach out. And places like Independent Living Nova Scotia, it's a great example where resources are out there and people want to help and want to help you through your journey, whatever that may be. And I think your journey can always change as well. So be okay with that. But it's really hard to not get discouraged because, as we know, especially in our province, there's not a lot of support for persons with disabilities, depending on where you are, whether you're working, whether you have an education. And we really need to improve those opportunities, because there's many people like us on this call that have a lot to provide our communities and a lot to give, and a different perspective, which I think our world needs. And I think it's starting to see. So kudos to us. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I don't think, I think like as a partner of somebody with a disability, like I also had to go through my own journey of what independent living meant and kind of figuring that out as you go. And I think it's okay to not know what's going on, or to not know what you want or how things will work, but just to keep an open mind and to learn from different experiences and learn how you can work as a team, and learn what your strengths and weaknesses are with your partner, if you have a partner who has a disability, and how you can work together to kind of become a good team and figure out what independent living looks like to both of you.
Great, thanks so much. These have all been really amazing answers.